April's Overview and Scrutiny Committee. Thank you all for waiting with us for 10 minutes while we fix the technical problem. So at present at today's meeting, or at least invited, certainly are members of the committee, co-op members and representatives of the Harrow Youth Parliament. I don't think we have any cabinet members here, but we do obviously have Charlie Stewart if needs be. Can I refer members of the committee to the protocols on holding virtual meetings? Members of the committee should ensure they have their videos on at all times with a microphone on mute unless they're speaking. Other members and participants should switch off their videos and put their microphones on mute until they are invited to speak. In case of technical problems, the meeting will be adjourned, although I think we've had our quota of technical problems today, so it shouldn't be a problem. We are quorate. The meeting is now being audio and video recorded and will be available to watch for members of the public on the website. And if members of the committee want to speak, please use the raise hand function on Teams, and I will see if I don't spot you and you feel like I'm about to move on, just unmute yourself and say you've not spotted me. Before I move on to the main items, I just want to explain to members of the committee why we do have a very light agenda today and why lots of meetings have been moving around. And that's because we are, as already discussed, we are trying to ensure that we have good scrutiny of the council's accommodation strategy and contract close for the HSDP, which is the largest contract the council is going to sign, has signed for 10 years and probably for another 10. Unfortunately, the timings of those have been constantly changing, and we've been moving with those changes. It has been frustrating, and I have raised my frustrations at the fact that we have now moved and cancelled meetings 4 times to fit in line with cabinet. The accommodation strategy was due to go to the cabinet meeting on the 29th of April, and that was the item we were supposed to be discussing today. That item is not going to the 29th of April cabinet, and therefore we don't have that item for discussion. It does mean that we will be having to fit in an additional meeting of the committee in May. Dates will be, I'll let everyone know, myself and Stephen are meeting with officers on Thursday just to agree that timetable. So as soon as I know, I'll let you know, but that is why we've got a relatively light agenda today. But the time you save today will be, I'll ask you to have another meeting in May. So that's why we've got a short agenda, and I'm now going to move on to the agenda. So item 1 is attendance by reserve members. I don't see any, there are no reserve members. Item 2 is declarations of interest, which has been published. Are there any declarations of interest people want to declare that hasn't already been declared on the published form? No. Okay. Minutes, they're on pages 7 to 18. Oh, Dan.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I just wanted to confirm that I have no interests to declare. Yeah. Okay,
brilliant. Item 3 is minutes of the meeting, which is on minutes of the last meeting, which is on page 7 to 18 of your report. We did ask if anyone had any comments in advance of the meeting. None have been received. Just checking whether anyone have any comments. No. Okay, I'll sign those as a proper record. Item 4 is public questions. We've not received any on the deadline. Item 5 is petitions. I'm not expecting any unless anyone has any petitions. No. References from Council and Cabinet, there aren't any. Item 7 is the Scrutiny Annual Report. I'm going to introduce this report and then open up for questions, comments. People should have had a chance to read it. It is a good report that gives a good review of the work we've done over the last year. The leads, as well as chairs and vice chairs of the subcommittees, have all had a chance to input. We were, for those that remember what we did last year, we had quite a jazzy report that the comms team helped us put together along with Jean and others who led on that to create quite a jazzy report. Unfortunately, because of COVID, and other things, we just did not have the ability to draw on the resources of the comms team this year. So I do want to thank all the officers, Nareen and others, who have put a lot of effort into getting this report in on that, and it will go to full council for agreeing. So we do need to both consider the report and submit it to full council. And I'll open up for questions. And Stephen.
Thank you very much, Sachin. Really, just wanted to add my thanks to the officers, to Nareen, but also to David Norton. I think the interviews that those of us that did interviews, was a really good exercise. And I think, from my point of view, the first time I've been through this process, I thought it went really well. I think the report we've ended up with is a very good one, and I think we can be proud as Scrutiny and as the subcommittees. We can be very proud of what we've been able to do this year, given the circumstances.
Fully agree with that. Jean.
Thank you, Sachin. I'd like to commend this report because, as you've described, it was really difficult. And the structure last year, I think, worked really well this year. And it doesn't have all the bells and whistles, but it has most of the bells and whistles. And I think it conveys the way we work as well as our focus. So for me, it presents Overview and Scrutiny as it is. And one would hope if people read it, they'll understand what the purpose of Overview and Scrutiny is, as well as the sort of people that, we're quite human. We do stuff and we do things with our residents, etc. So I think from that point of view, it's a jolly good stab, even though we couldn't do it in as much as we did in COVID. But also I echo David Norton. Last year we did it, I said this, and the interviews were okay, but they're a bit stilted. This time I think David Norton was there to learn, but also there to be really helpful in terms of probing and questioning and things. And that could be, and credit to Nareen, that could be a way of moving forward for next time, even if we don't have the bells and whistles. So thank you. Thank her.
Absolutely. Are there any other comments? Yeah, I just want to echo that point about David Norton. Sorry, I should have referred to him in the introduction. He's come in to help us put this together, and I think it's worked very well. So what will happen next with this? It will go to full council. So we've got to consider and agree the Scrutiny annual report and submit it to annual council for full for endorsement. Is that agreed?
Agreed.
Agreed. Fantastic. Thank you very much.
Agreed.
Okay, I'm going to move on to item 8, which is Scrutiny Work Programme. Again, this is the annual report that we bring to the committee, just focusing on what's happening over the next year. It is as the 4th year of administration is a short year, because the reality is from January 2022 onwards, the council work winds down as people start electioneering and start the process for incoming councillors and others. So the year itself is a kind of May to December year. What we'll be aiming to do is finish the work that we've started, and we've got our final report gives us an idea of some of the work that is still ongoing, but also focusing on a number of areas. I want to highlight particularly some work around the council's just had a review done by Patrick Vernon OBE on race relations and impact in the council, and we certainly need. It's a very important report, and it's very important that this Overview and Scrutiny Committee, in our role of holding the executive to account, look at that. And there is the first of that will come to our meeting in June, and probably some work through August before it goes to Cabinet in September. So that will be a big part of the work, and hopefully something that all members, it's something that I would like to see us take on, both all members of the committee, but all leads, chairs and vice chairs of subcommittees, because it is such an important part of the work. The other area of course, what we're looking at is the council's recovery from COVID. It has been a year that has been like no other for the council. We all talk about the phrases are different, but build back better, build back differently. But the sentiment is all the same, which is as we look to the future, we shouldn't just say, well, in 2021 we're just going to do what we did in 2019. This is a year of change, but it's a year to allow us to look at what we've done as a council, and how we can do that differently. And you know, things like these virtual meetings are a good example of how actually we're able to allow more participation. So the report itself, the work plan gives you a good idea of the work that we'll be doing and the subcommittees are doing. If people do have comments, raise it now, but also via the leads and chairs, or chairs and vice chairs of committee as well. So on that note, I'm going to open it up to any questions or comments. No? Okay. I think it's been through quite a lot of consultation, so I'll take that as people having comments already taken on board. So the committee needs to consider and approve the work programme to guide the work for 21-22, and we need to submit it for full council for endorsement. Is that agreed? Great, fantastic.
Agreed.
Thank you. Moving on to item 9, which is the shared scrutiny review, shared services scrutiny review, and I'm going to hand that straight over to Candy, who's the chair of that review. Candy.
Thank you, Chair, for that. I believe you've all had a chance to sort of look at the report itself, so I mean, I wouldn't sort of spend time repeating details there. Just kind of give you a brief overview of what this report is and what we managed to do. As you would all be aware, this report was in the midst of the pandemic and everything else connected with it. Although we started this in late 2019 on the sort of one of the work programs kind of necessitated this report. I'd like to thank Mohammed Elias, who was leading officer on this. He did a very good job of, living this report to the extent that it could be finished off without him being present. And Naren did a wonderful job of actually putting this together and just putting the finishing touches for us to kind of be able to conclude on it. Unfortunately, it was meant to be a challenge panel kind of setup, which wasn't possible. We had one meeting, which was really a scoping meeting, which kind of was attended by all the members that had volunteered to be on this. But otherwise, we were unable to follow that up. As a caveat as well, due to the difficulties and the council's priorities being focused on dealing with the pandemic, I must emphasize that I do not feel in terms of some of the objectives were necessarily met. Just as a basic understanding of what shared services will entail in any scenario would be that the council is trying to look for some kind of efficiencies, improvement of services, and possibly cost savings. To some extent, we weren't able to, in each area possible, to say, did we get all the financial information required over the duration of the arrangement? Unfortunately, I wouldn't say we did. So it's not necessarily sort of, concluded to the nth degree we would have liked. Irrespective, I think Mohammed did a good job in terms of coming up with some kind of lessons and points for us to focus on. But mainly, if I may, Chair, it's just to emphasize in terms of how we've left this report and what are the recommendations we're making to Cabinet for the consideration and for the considered responses, I would say, more important than anything to say how we move forward, because this in the challenges that each and every council faces across the country, it's always about finding solutions to say how can we work better, how can we deliver services within the constraints we face on a daily basis. So shared services is one approach, possibly. There are lots of pros and cons, as you would see listed out in the report, which is again based on our sort of understanding and learnings, because Harrow has the privilege, the London Borough of Harrow has had the privilege of sharing services, we all out of HB law, which will combine the skills of our lawyers with Barnet Council, with the HR service with Buckingham, with procurement and trading service and special needs transport with Brent Council, of which HB law still ongoing. Unfortunately, we didn't get each and every piece of information we would like to. The HR services is now disengaged. Again, we didn't get a proper opportunity to speak to everyone we wish to speak to, spoken in respect of the other side, which is Buckingham. Procurement, again, it finished well before we kind of looking at it as a part of a review. The learnings are noted in the report. Trading standards still ongoing with Brent. It seems to be one of the shrinking services, an important one, although, but not that's going to sort of ring too many bells within the council's functions in terms of the costs and benefits, but important nevertheless. Special needs transport still an ongoing arrangement and an important one in terms of being able to provide a good service across both boroughs. So just to summarize, we've left this report in the hands of the Scrutiny Committee for a response from Cabinet, and hopefully just a follow-up on this pretty soon, just to sort of be able to focus on areas which we think would add value to this report. And the first recommendation, if I may, is that the council, that every decision that the council takes around future shared services arrangement should be supported by robust feasibility studies, appraisals and a business case, which have been considered by CSB and have the opportunity to be critically and constructively challenged by members. So it's something I think that'll be useful. So I haven't come across personally if there is that this was actually presented before scrutiny committees before, but it's something that has come out of the recommendation. Again, a checklist has been developed in terms of covering various areas as part of the report, and that's also a recommendation that the council develops a robust checklist of consideration in various areas, not just financial aspects and cost, and examples have been given in the report. And they need to take into account that the shared service is going to be beneficial to Harrow Council, and that risks are identified and can be mitigated. And we have attached a checklist for the suggested sort of groups of areas which needs to be considered. The third recommendation is around the information identified by the review following the channel plan is followed by ONS. So we would like this to be followed by ONS as and when appropriate, and the scrutiny work program and resources. And one of the critical points might not necessarily be summarized here was that we need to have in those contracts and agreements an exit strategy in every situation we get sort of involved in. It is there somewhere in the report, but I think it's one of the critical issues that should be part of any shared service, that what is the exit strategy? What are the costs? So I think that should be laid out from the beginning rather than sort of something that is an afterthought, when things go pear-shaped or when we decide to exit. So it's a very extensive report, and once again, in the difficult circumstances we have. So I salute all the officers involved and who have helped us, and Nareen especially, because she was left to pick up the pieces, and she didn't have the guidance of a challenge panel where there is an opportunity to focus more on sort of points and areas and reasoning. So she really had to just go with what she had, and despite everything, I think she's done a wonderful job, and I take this opportunity to thank her and all the officers, and I hope we can get something really good out of the process as we go forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Jean.
Thank you, Sachin. One thing, I do have a declaration of interest. It's not the reason I have my hand up, because special needs transport was mentioned. So as a chairman of Shaftesbury High School for Special Needs, I'd like to make that declaration, as we use it a lot, obviously. Okay. Credit to the review. Kanti, I know, we spoke to him before, was a little bit disappointed, but it couldn't be full throttle, if you like. But given the restrictions we've had from the pandemic, I think looking at the outcomes and so on, Kanti, I think it's really excellent. I think what we need to be looking at is as Charlie knows, we regard ourselves as a learning organisation. So the sorts of recommendations, the observations and recommendations are coming through from here. I'd like to see them actively built into whatever we do going forward vis-a-vis shared services, because there are some areas where you can fall on your nose, and there's some other areas where they work really well. And I think the learning that you've picked up on, as well as the commercial side, Canty and colleagues, Honey, I know was on one of them as well, I think is really important to us. So I commend it absolutely, but can we look at it in terms of the, sorry, things are flashing up on my screen and I'm not touching it, I promise you. So yeah, we're a learning organisation, let's learn and let's see how we can build some of these observations in that the review group has made. Thank you, Sachin.
Absolutely. Stephen.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, just like to add, well done to Canty and the rest of the members on the panel, and also to the officers for what is a very good report, especially under the circumstances. And I, as Jean said, I know that Canty and the panel, would have been keen to have done more had there not been the restrictions. And I do think it's a good idea for the committee to keep a watching brief on this matter, and if possible at some point in the next year or two, come back to this matter, and if there's an opportunity to complete some of the some of the work that was not able to be completed, that would be good. But for what for what it is and for what we've got in front of us, I think it's a very good report, and well done to all involved.
Absolutely. Are there any other questions or comments? Can't see any. I just want to also add my thanks to Canty and the members of the review panel. In March last year, myself and Richard and then Stephen, we had to take some difficult decisions about what within the function of the scrutiny would have to stop to allow the council to focus on the pandemic, and this review was a victim of the work that we did to slash our programme to allow officers to move to other things. So can I thank you? I know that you started this work in, I think that it was late 2019 when some of the terms of reference are put together, and it's now April 2021 before it's coming. So thank you for allowing us to do that. And then I think Stephen's right, given everything was curtailed a little bit, that this might be an area to put onto the work plan post 2022 to bring back, and that's something certainly that we can make sure happens. I also just want to point out, and I will formally read it, one of the other things we're doing in terms of our work to not push too much onto the capacity of Cabinet, because we know the Council and Cabinet are still dealing with COVID recoveries. We're extending the period, so normally Cabinet would be expected to respond, I think, within 3 months. We're giving them until September 2021 to respond to this report, and that is just because officers are still, a lot of officers are working on surge testing, on vaccine rollout, and all sorts of other things, and it's right that should be their focus, and other things. This is an important bit of work, but it is not more important than some of the things going on with COVID recovery. So on that note, I'm going to just read our recommendations so that it's very clear. That the committee consider endorse the report from the Shared Services Scrutiny Review, forward the review's report and recommendations to Cabinet for consideration and response, and 3, in line with Rule 25.1.1 of the committee procedure rules in the Constitution, we suspend Rule 36.5 to allow the executive a longer time frame within which to respond in recognition of the current stretch and organisation capacity, a revised deadline of September 2021 by which to respond is provided. Are those recommendations agreed?
Agreed.
Agreed.
Great. Thank you, and thank you everyone on that report. move on to the final item, which is any other business. I've not been notified on that. Is there any other business? No. Okay. Thank you all. We will have a special meeting, an additional meeting in May, but we will let you know by email. Thank you all. Good night.
No, thank you.